Adding molding to a project is a nice little detail. When we were working on a dartboard cabinet for one of the episodes of the Woodsmith Shop, we wanted to add cove molding up at the top. Now sometimes you can find cove molding in your local lumber yard, and it's the right species of the project you're working on, and sometimes you can't. So how do you make cove molding in your own shop?
Well, when I think of molding and curves, I think of router table, and you can buy specialized bits for cove molding, but the nice thing is you probably already have a tool to do that same kind of cove molding with, and that's a table saw.
So how do you make this curve cut at a table saw? Well, it actually involves two different setups that you have to do on your saw. First, you're just raising the blade to the right height, and second, you're adding some fences at an angle to the blade. Now we'll get to that in just a minute, but first we'll raise the blade.
Right. Now we raise the blade because we need to know exactly the depth of the cove we're looking for, and that's the distance from the bottom of the cove to the top edge of the workpiece. Now for this piece of cove molding, that's 5/16 of an inch, so I've set my blade for a 5/16 inch deep cut. But what's really critical is where that blade's going to enter the workpiece. So back here, where it enters the workpiece, I've lined up a piece of masking tape and placed that in position.
So the next step is to add a fence or a guide rail to guide the workpiece at an angle across the blade. Now, what's the angle? Well, what we found is that an angle of 30 degrees will produce a cove that's approximately the shape of most of the cove that you can buy in a lumber yard. So what we'll do is we've got a piece of plywood, Baltic birch plywood, to act as our fence, and we're going to put it at a 30-degree angle to the blade.
Now, I've already got my bevel gauge set for 30 degrees, so I'm just going to bring that in along the back edge of the tabletop here, and then I'll just bring my fence up against it. Now what's critical though is we want to have a little clearance between the blade and the fence, so we position the fence so that there's about 1/4 of an inch from the fence to the blade.
Now, normally you'd start to clamp this all in place right now, but if you're alone in your shop or something, clamping both ends of this thing on the table saw is a big hassle. So what we found that's a nice trick to do that is that we've got it at our 30-degree angle, and now we'll actually just mark a line right on the table saw top, and that gives us the position of this fence. Now we can remove the fence and then remove that piece of tape so it's not in the way. We'll bring the fence back along that marked line, and now we're going to clamp it in place. We'll need a little spacer block to fit on the back rail of the table saw so that we can clamp the fence down to it, and we have another spacer block on the front, and then we'll get both ends clamped in position. Okay, our first fence is clamped down, and we use that reference line to get the position. It's 30 degrees from our blade. Now we can lower the blade, then we're going to add a second fence exactly parallel to the first one, and the distance between the two is the width of our workpiece.
Now, and a great way to position that is with the workpiece, set the fence in, and all you're looking for is a nice sliding fit so that you can make the cut. Then we can just clamp this in place. Well, with the fence clamped in place, we have a smooth sliding fit. We're ready for the cut.
So you don't want to raise the blade all the way up. You just want to raise it just a little bit above the surface, and we're going to make our first cut, and then we'll make a series of cuts. So we'll get started on that.
After making a smooth, even pass, raise the blade slightly and repeat the process. Continue making passes until you reach the full depth of the cove. Well, with a little sanding, we'll have a smooth, even cove.
Now to complete this, to make it a piece of molding, all you need to do is make a couple of 45-degree cuts on the back side. But this is an easy way to make cove molding right in your own shop using a table saw.